very shocking statement of the Prophet for many people, peace be upon him. He tells his companions, none of you will enter paradise due to your deeds. They say, no, not even you, not even my deeds. إِلَّا أَنْ يَتَغَمَّدَنِي اللَّهُ بِرَحْمَتِهِ. It's not my deeds that have weight. Through Allah's mercy, He gave my deeds some weight. If not, they don't mean anything. And so it's that belief that it's not me, it's not my deeds, there's no, whatever I have done, that's not carrying me to paradise. It is purely the mercy of Allah, the most merciful. If not for which, everything I did would mean nothing. It would have no value.
How do you personally protect yourself from thinking of yourself too highly, from taking credit? And then how should anyone sort of protect themselves from like kind of getting too full of themselves?
One has to remember all the variables in their life that could have gone a different way. What if I was born in a different family? What if I reacted differently to difficulty? What if I was in drug rehab instead of in the mosque? There's so many variables that were not in my control every step of my life. Very few things were up to me and my choices. And even those choices, I made many terrible ones. If I am here, sat talking to you, and in this line of work, conveying the mercy of the Messenger, peace be upon him, to the world, it is some beautiful mercy and subtlety. It is some beautiful mercy and subtlety and guidance of Allah and His facilitation that led me here. If not, Lord knows where I would be. And so it's, for me personally, it's thinking of those variables. If things were slightly different, how would they have been? Where would I have been? If you have friends who were in the same school, who grew up in the same area, who had similar families, and you have friends who are in jail or dead or jobless or disbelievers after being Muslim, then you know that there is a guiding hand in all of this. So that's part of that realization. When we look at the life of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, one of the fascinating stories is that after one of his children passes away, there's an eclipse. And you know what people do? Association, right? They say, wow, in order to honor the messenger, Allah the Almighty created an eclipse that eclipsed the whole world in darkness to mourn the passing of his child. And the Prophet, peace be upon him, says, no. The sun and the moon are two of God's signs. They do not move for the living or passing of anybody. This is the act of God, independently of what happened to my son or my child. When you see it, then you have to remember Allah and pray, etc., because you're witnessing a miracle. He could have taken the credit. In fact, if he was a false messenger, it would have been easy. Guys, you see what happened? Messenger confirmed, but he denies it. And whenever Allah talks to the messenger, peace be upon him, it's always, remember what I have given you that you have to convey to others. Not that it was from you. Remember that I selected you. He's always giving reminders that everything is ultimately sourced in him, not in yourself. And so one of the parts of the Prophet, peace be upon him's practice is that he's always asking Allah to accept his deeds. He's guaranteed paradise. He's the last messenger. He has this high status amongst all the messengers. And yet, he's constantly insecure about the acceptance of his deed. Where does that insecurity come from? Abraham, the father of the messengers, he's building the Kaaba. He raises his hands. Rabbi janubni wa bani an na'bud al-asnam. Oh my Lord, please don't let me or my kids worship idols. You're the father of monotheism. What do you mean, don't let me worship idols? Why is he so insecure? Because the sign of deep belief is a constant insecurity that whatever I have done may be nothing and may turn to dust on the day of judgment. And so the Prophet, peace be upon him, when he receives the list of the pretend believers, Umar ibn Khattab comes running and asks him, or rather he asks Hudayfa ibn al-Yaman, who had the list, I don't want to know who's on the list, just tell me, am I on the list? This is one of the 10 men promised paradise. So they lived constantly, and the way Allah describes it, وَالَّذِينَ يُؤْتُونَ مَا آتَوْا, do what you do, sacrifice what you sacrifice, sweat for my sake as you do. But remember, وَقُلُوبُهُمْ وَجِلَةٌ أَنَّهُمْ إِلَى رَبِّهِمْ رَاجِعُونَ. But be constantly insecure. Your heart should tremble that what will happen when all this goes back to Allah, will it be accepted or not? I have no clue. And so that one of the Prophet's most, peace be upon him, his most frequent supplications was رَبَّنَا تَقَبَّلْ مِنَّا إِنَّكَ أَنْتَ السَّمِيعُ الْعَلِيمُ. Oh Allah, please accept my deed with its shortcomings, with its mistakes, with whatever it was lacking, from your mercy, not from my deeds. So it's this constant mindset that he infuses in his companions. Never feel secure. أَأَمِنْتُم مَّنْ فِي السَّمَاءِ. Do you feel safe that the one who is above the heavens would just knock everything you have done to dust? When he reminds his companions, do you know that the first three people do you know that the first three people do you know the first three people who will be thrown to the fire? The first will be a scholar. He only learned to say that I learned. The second will be a qari, a reciter who only recited to be called a reciter. The third will be someone who fought in the path of Allah, but he only fought to be so it could be said that he was brave. If these are the first three people to be thrown to the fire, then how can we be secure for our deeds? I'll stop there.